Hello, everyone. How is everyone? Okay, before we get started, I would like, if you went to yesterday's event, we would love to hear your feedback. So please put in the chat box what you thought about yesterday's event. If you didn't get to go, or this is just your first event, like with us, please put in the chat, like, what are you excited about today and like what will be. Thank you. So I'll get started with my introduction. So hi, everyone. I'm Kerry-Ann Lombela. I'm the founder of All Access. If you're unfamiliar with All Access, it's a student-run community for those who are early in their entertainment careers. So undergraduate students, graduate students, recent graduates, those making career pivots. So we focus on networking, professional development, panel events like this, internship opportunities, job opportunities. We're focused on kind of bridging the gap and ending the gatekeeping in the entertainment industry and making sure everyone has the resources to break in. So we're officially partnered with Warner Music Group Student Program. So that's why we're hosting an event like this. And this event is to promote Warner Music Group's Emerging Talent Associate program, which is their summer 21 internship. We're super excited. In order to help students stand out for this event, we're hosted a series of two events. So the part one was yesterday on the How to Stand Out panel. Today is Ask a Recruiter. We have amazing HR professionals and recruiters here today to kind of demystify what the internship recruitment process is like and kind of share insights on how you can stand out and you can be the best candidate possible. And then right after this, we have a Clubhouse after party where we'll be answering more questions. So don't worry. But I think the real special part about today is that we have a live resume review. I've never been to no event with no live resume review. So super excited to hear about that and hear the feedback on how everyone's resume is looking. And also if you are eligible, so for the Warner Music Group internship program, you have to graduate between December 2021 and to August 2023. If you are eligible, you will get your application prioritized for review. The recruiter is literally right here on the panel. So do not worry. I think that covers everything. And yeah, feel free to put any questions, comments in the chat box. And then Mia, I will pass it over to you to talk about color music.
Yes, thank you, Kerry-Ann. So the Color Music Collective was started about a year ago. We really try to focus on amplifying POC and LGBTQ voices in the music industry and really starting the next generation of students and recent postgrads to really kick off their careers for those who are interested in the music industry. So we do that through networking panels, kind of similar to this. We also have a blog, a mentorship program that we do to our volunteers, and amongst other things. And we're about to launch our first masterclass series next month. So definitely stay up to date with that. All information will be on all of our social media platforms. It's just at Color Music Collective for everything.
So thank you, Mia, for that. And yes, we'll drop these links down below about All Access and Color Music Collective, two great programs to be a part of. So first, I want to start with the panelists, the shining stars of today's event. So Arianny, I will start with you. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Arianny. I'm the founder of Revamped. Revamped is a career resource platform where I focus my efforts on aiding emergent talent lead or gain access to leading organizations such as Warner Music, Google, Instagram, Facebook. And the way that I do and carry out my operations is through resume revamps, LinkedIn revamps, and any other sort of professional tool that I can reform or reorganize so that I can help talent stand out.
Sophie, you can go next.
Sure. Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm a recruiting coordinator. I work with GenesisGlobal, and we work with, the United Talent Agency, and I help recruit for their agent training program and the internship programs as well. And I'm really excited to be here. I actually didn't even have a start in entertainment, so it's really possible to have a different approach and be able to get into the industry. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for having me.
I guess I'm next. Hey everyone, my name is Asma. I'm the Student Programs Lead at Warner Music Group. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so happy to see so many familiar faces too. I've seen a lot of you at our last event and events that we've been hosting, so it's so great to see you again. But we're really excited to be talking about all things related to you and how we can really push you to be successful. My background has always been working with students, whether it's in the campus recruiting realm or student programs or even full-time recruitment. So again, this is my life. I'm here to hopefully find you ways to be successful, whether it's for our internship program or anywhere else you're applying. And yeah, we're really excited. I'll throw it back over to Mia and Kerry-Ann.
So thank you. So let's get started to the real part about these questions. So I want to know, can you please walk us through the recruitment process? Like, what happens to an application once you submit, and how does the dreaded ATS even work? Anyone can.
Do you want us to just jump in?
Yeah, y'all can just jump in, don't worry.
Okay, well, I have to warn you, I hate awkward silences, so I will always jump in. So please feel free to just ever take yourself off mute. But I think that the internship process is a lot more ambiguous than full-time recruitment because the application window tends to be a lot longer than a typical job that you'll post and you'll apply to. So I'll speak to Warner Music Group, but I'll give you a little insight in my previous career too. So for WMG, we typically have our internship applications open for 2 to 3, maybe 4 months sometimes. So you can apply that first day that it's posted, but maybe you won't hear back until May. So let's say it's posted in February, you might not hear back until May. It's a really long window to wait. And I think that's pretty common across all internship application realms, but specifically in music, I think it's really, really similar. And at Warner Music Group, we are always very, very late to the application game. So our applications are always the last to go up. We're always the last to get back to you. But it kind of works because we get the students that are really passionate about music and specifically our artists and our company. But once you hit that submit button, your application kind of gets zipped into the world of that ATS. But I can assure you there is a human behind that screen, and that human is me. So we really do review every single application, every single resume, and that's why it takes so long. A lot of things can get lost in the ATS, which is why we always recommend submitting your resume. Can be shocking, but a lot of people just fill out the application questionnaire, will include their information and won't attach a resume. And it makes it really difficult because your resume gets all jumbled up in there. So always attach your resume. I'd recommend a PDF, and we'll get a little bit more into your resume later on. But once you submit, the process that takes the longest is actually reviewing a ton of those applications. And after we have a chance to do that, we'll push you over to the first round. Your first round of interviews is almost always going to be with an HR rep, whether that's me or someone on my team. And they're going to do that first pre-screen to make sure everything on your resume kind of matches what you're saying. So if you shared that you're graduating in May, we want to make sure that you are graduating in May, that you're still, involved in all these clubs that are listed on your resume, because we can tell if you're putting everything and anything that you've ever participated in on your resume. We want to hear about the things that you've actually done. So essentially with that first conversation, I hate the word interview, it's really a conversation. It's meant to just get an understanding of who you are, bring the human back into this internship interview experience. And then we push you forward. And our process is a little bit different, where you're not applying to a specific role, you're applying to our internship pool, and then we suggest you for different internships within WMG. So we're hiring for over 60 internships, but there's only one posting, there's only one position. And we make that decision of, okay, you say that you're interested in A&R, but you really don't have A&R experience. What you'd actually be a good fit for is a marketing role. So that's where we kind of pitch in, and we are like the matchmaker, and we push you forward to different hiring managers that you'll be a really good fit for. And it's really great in the sense of you're not applying to one role and that's it. If you don't get that role, you're just out of the process. We're able to resubmit your resume over and over again, so that you're able to be eligible and interview for a couple different positions rather than, again, being one and done. But I'll throw it over to, I'm going to pick on Sophie to share their process, and then we'll keep moving, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, kind of similar. There's a human definitely behind reviewing everything. You know, I know what the best way with finding a job, you know, always advice that I always give, you know, any candidate is to network with people at the job you're applying to. Like LinkedIn is honestly your best resource. Make sure you do a lot of research on the company before, really make sure that's where you want to be. That's a fit. Look at the people that are there, look at their client roster, really plan from there. I mean, I think you covered a lot of the points I would make too, you know, submitting a PDF is important, kind of condensing, and I know we're going to go over all of that in a resume review, but I can't say enough how important LinkedIn is and how important it is to have that research and really know this is where I want to be, and kind of really focusing that energy. And something else that also can work too when you submit a resume is if you want to not email, but message someone on LinkedIn is a really great way. Sending a short message that says, hi, you know, I applied for this role. I'm really passionate about it, you know, kind of just putting a face to the name is also a really great piece of advice. And yeah, again, I think you covered most of my points before, but definitely a human is behind all of it. Make sure it's a PDF, do your research, and that really will help you in the application process.
And I just want to piggyback off what Sophie said, definitely focusing on that element of networking and being organic. And let's say that, you know, that whole process comes to a close and you get a conversation out of that outreach. Don't just end it there. Make sure that you're following up with this connection, not only because you don't want to make it seem like you just use that person to garner certain insight, but you never know what other opportunities can open when you're just authentically you, offering your experience and really refining your storytelling ways.
And I also think it's important to be polite with how you're reaching out to people. I know, like, in my LinkedIn, there are so many messages that I hope I will get to, but some of them are just like ambushing me where I applied to this role 10 years ago, whatever. And I'd love to respond to you and let you know what your application status is, but there are like 100 other people who have sent me that exact same email or DM or whatever you want to call it. So I think it's always just like thinking about what you're asking. And if you want your message to be read, just make sure you're being polite, you're being respectful of whoever you're reaching out to. The worst I think can ever happen is that they don't get back to you or they say no. But typically, you know, we're not evil people. We do want to help you. We do want to read and understand, you know, how we can get that message out to you. Just think about the situation and understand, you know, if we're not getting back to you, maybe it's our busy season, things like that. But I think a follow-up never hurts.
I also wanted to ask you all in terms of like, we'll get to it in terms of the resume, but in terms of like that being rejected and being ghosted, like some people are getting auto-rejected, like what, like why so, like what are they, like is it something about their application, is there, what isn't panning? And then also like how can they receive feedback in terms of how to improve, or is it okay for them to apply again?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and share my insight and then let Asma or Sophie, you know, share their feedback. So I used to work in HR. I was a talent coordinator. That was my proper or formal role. But the reason that individuals are getting rejected, let's say you're getting that rejection email on a Saturday at 4 o'clock in the morning, it's not because a human is rejecting you at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's actually because of the applicant tracking system. And as Kerry-Ann mentioned, it is kind of like a match system. I call it the Tinder of applying to jobs. So it's basically like how well does your resume pair up with what the company is looking for. For example, you know, Warner is looking for somebody with marketing. How many times do you have the word marketing, or how many what words are you populating into your resume? Because that way the ATS is going to rank your resume based on a certain score. And then it'll populate, you know, the 10%, 20%, 30% type of applicants. So it's very logistical. I always say it's not you. It's just my feedback would always be look at the job description and I definitely tell applicants, don't feel forced, like you have to refine your resume to every single job, because that becomes very tiresome. But if there is a job, such as Warner, and you want to apply to their specific program, do take a look at your resume, see how you can refine it so that it can match with what they're looking for, but also being authentic to your experience. Don't be so focused on the whole, I have to be the perfect candidate on paper, because at the end of the day, you will be meeting somebody like Asma and Sophie, and you are going to have to explain that experience. So that's my feedback.
I want to piggyback off of that because I was going to say exactly that, like checking the goals on some job applications. It might say something like, what are your career goals, or what do you want to do? And if you match that kind of to the description as close as you can, if that's really what you want to do, making sure, of course, you're honest is really important. Having those keywords, definitely wonderful advice. Absolutely. And then I know in regards to reaching out for feedback, if you don't hear right away, or maybe you got rejected, I personally, maybe for myself, I'm okay with someone reaching out to me and asking like, hi, I applied. Do you have any advice? Do you have anything I can read? Do you have anything I can look at? I think that's totally fine. Obviously, approaching it from a polite angle and understanding that recruiters have a lot of people they're talking to every day, a lot of interviews they're going through. So if they don't respond right away, give it some time. You can always follow up politely if you haven't heard in a couple of weeks. But I do think it's okay to reach out for that feedback, especially if that role is like a dream job. And you could reapply, or even if there's other positions that match your qualifications that you see, apply there. And if you have that connection with the recruiter on LinkedIn, they might even be able to help you in the process. So yeah, definitely making sure to have that keyword. That's great. Really great advice.
Yeah, and I have the same sentiments where I think it's like the application tracking systems, those are what really get you sometimes, where sometimes it's just like so robotic, and that's why you could get rejected, but it doesn't necessarily mean the reason that you got rejected is invalid, because they do look for those key graduation dates, your eligibility. So sometimes it might be a cold-hearted message, but I don't think it hurts to ever reach out and ask. The one thing I'll say is I've tried to push this forward at WMG is anytime we push anyone to that first or second round of interviews where it's actually a live interview, we always suggest our hiring managers to go through and do a human or an actual live decline, because I think like getting a decline from a system is not the experience that we want to share, especially when you've gone through, you've talked to someone. I think that's also an instance where you can really get that feedback because you're reacting in a live situation. I think when it gets to like, we use HireVue. So when it gets to HireVue and you're asking for feedback, sometimes it's just as simple as, okay, you just don't have that experience, or we're looking for something really, really specific, like Excel skills or knowing Sharp or something like that, and you just don't have that. And that's where we'll kind of clump you into those basic qualification categories. So we have categories that we look at when we're reviewing resumes. But if you do make it to a situation where you're having a live conversation, I almost feel that you are entitled to feedback to understand, what's the real reason that I wasn't selected? Are these things that I can improve? Was it a bad interview? Was it, the way that I phrased something on my resume? I think it doesn't hurt to ask. And most times I've seen at WMG specifically, hiring managers are totally open to writing you an email, getting on a phone and quickly just sharing, this is the reason we opted for another candidate. So I think it's always about how you ask and when you ask, but just knowing like where you're at in the stage of the process and how far you've made it along too just helps. So just the background insight.
Yeah, and rejection shouldn't be something, that you should let speak to your ability to succeed as an applicant, as a candidate, because at the end of the day, unfortunately, it's kind of like a numbers game. They have certain slots to fill. So don't let it be indicative of you as an applicant. And if you're really passionate, always come back. There's always next year, or maybe turn on LinkedIn notifications. There will be a new job posting, something within the realm of your alignment.
Yes, 100% agree with that, because I've had so many conversations with employees across our labels, across our business, who had shared, well, I applied to Atlantic 7 times and I didn't get it in until my senior year. And then I applied to this role, got passed over multiple times, but when the timing was right, I got that second interview. And then now there are employees here. So I think it is exactly like you said, it is a numbers game. It's always about getting the right timing, the right experience, the right role needs to be open for you too. So don't take that rejection as like, oh, this is my fault. 9 times out of 10, it's not your fault. It's not something you can control. You can't help it. If you don't have the experience, if you're not a senior, I mean, you're working your way up there. So I always agree with you. Like, you have to just keep applying. I think there's nothing wrong with that.
What advice would you give to applicants who want to really stand out among other candidates, but they may not have a lot of music industry experience?
So I have, again, like I said, I didn't start in an entertainment background. I studied political science, and I screen people all day who also did not have entertainment backgrounds. With entry-level jobs, as long as that passion is there, that's really what's going to shine through. I know it sounds a little cheesy to say be yourself, but it really is true. I mean, if you're yourself on your interview, you show that passion through, we're going to see that, and we're going to want to move you forward. But if you're still in school and you're applying for internships, some great clubs to get involved with on campus that I always talk to my candidates about too is if there's like a programming club on campus with a music event and entertainment, even like student journalism. I worked at a student paper. If you write reviews there, or if you work at your college radio station, or just something, if you can do something in the process and maybe mention that, like, oh, I just got started at my college station. If you're an intern, even like there are even local volunteer opportunities. I know it's a little hard in a COVID year. I know where I live, we have that with a local radio station if you want to build up experience during the process. But, at the end of the day, it's really going to be your passion. If you're, really plugged into everything going on, reading about it, really with music, like different kinds of publications. I know candidates have come back and said that they really like is following various smaller music blogs, Brooklyn Vegan, Pitchfork, all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, just showing that passion through, probably like the number one thing that, at least we're looking for. I think that's really important too. You can definitely tell that with someone right away. But if you're in school currently, find some, cool opportunities in the interview process, and you can mention that too. College radio is a great place to start.
Sophie, follow up on that quickly. I'm sorry. In terms of like showing your passion, like within the application, like a resume or maybe a cover letter, like what are some ways that, like, what are some tangible ways pre-interview people can show their passion?
Absolutely. So when I've interviewed people who want to work in live music or music in general, they usually talk about maybe a concert that really inspired them or an artist that really inspired them. And sometimes when we see you talk about like your favorite artist, we can really see that passion shine through. Or if you're a musician yourself, maybe even your own music that you've worked on, maybe shows that you've gone to. Again, when I've interviewed music clients, I mean, the first thing I'll always hear is like this live show that changed their life and then shaped it and then kind of impacted their path. And I've definitely seen passion come from there. Just kind of talking about, again, the artists they really like, the publications they're following, definitely is a great way to shine your passion through and just making that really authentic. So maybe starting there with your artists is like such a great way.
Something that I do want to say, and in alignment with what Sophie was just saying, my feedback would definitely be to utilize that passion to create your brand. For example, it totally doesn't matter if you don't have experience in the music industry, but let's say you have experience in sales and things of that sort. One, definitely find those transferable skills that you could transfer from industry to industry, whether it be, working with cross-functional team, perhaps, project management, or skills that you feel like are applicable to any industry, but that are relevant to what type of role you're currently want to get into. And then my last piece of advice it's all about, now we're kind of in an era where everything is a brand. So market yourself as a brand. For example, on LinkedIn, if you want to include what it is that you do and who you do it for on your LinkedIn header. For example, let's say if you're a music enthusiast and you perhaps enact marketing strategies to drive brand engagement of things of that sort, just creating a brand that aligns with your experience and kind of what you're looking to do. So a resume, of course, it's always great to create storytelling, and utilize numbers to talk about yourself on your resume. But LinkedIn is also kind of a form of an ATS because that's how recruiters are finding you. So branding yourself, utilizing certain keywords, and just making sure that you're doing everything that you can to set yourself apart.
Okay, y'all gave such detailed answers to all these. Asma, do you have anything to share?
No, I think you guys are great with what you're saying. I think it's always just like finding a way to make yourself stand out a little bit more. I always think about like one of my coworkers. He shares that the first time he really thought about music after applying to the industry was thinking back to films, because films, music, TV show it's so intertwined. And I always say like I watched a lot of Gossip Girl when I was growing up, and there are so many songs that are so intertwined with like Serena and Grand Central, different things like that. Like you think and relate music to that sense. And I think it just makes it more palatable when you are in the interview. You don't have to be like, I went to every single concert that happened in New York City in 2019. That's fine. That's great for you. But like, it's not going to make you stand out anymore. You want to make that conversation. And the only other thing I want to add is definitely 100% bring your personality to that conversation or that interview. There are so many interviews that I've seen, and I'm sure you both have seen something similar, where they'll make the whole conversation talking about, you know, I did all of this growing up and this is why I'm the best person. And I agree, like, I think you're great, but we want that passion to be kind of like, we want it to complement the rest of what you're doing. So it's really great when you have everything interested in music, but also like show us some of your skills and how you're still practicing those while also balancing your passions. And I think sometimes people get too caught up in joining every single thing that they can, and they realize, you know, it is part of what you're doing, what you're studying, and what you have to offer, what you're creating. So don't ever forget about that part either.
Okay. So passion is important, but showcasing that tangible skills, back to what Arianny said, in terms of like, look at that job description and see what transfers over. So this is the perfect segue to go into the live resume review and like hear firsthand and see a tangible example. So Asma, if you can please share your screen and we can get started. Thank you. Also, while she sets that up, I'm actually helping recruit for Asma's intern in the summer. So if you look at the chat box, I posted it, but I can post it and someone can post it on YouTube as well. I'm going to be the one screening the resumes. So please take heed of everyone's tips here. And I think applications, like for me, close tonight. So look forward to that.
Kerry-Ann, do you want to be my intern? Because I think you're fantastic already.
You already know I got
thank you for all your help. Thank you for all of your help.
Thank you. Also, like I made a LinkedIn post about like the takeaways, but it's not about me. So let's get started in terms of the resume review. How about Sophie, like, can you start off with the first one and show some of your thoughts?
Yeah, so first of all, I mean, I do like the little, I don't think you necessarily need those symbols next to it if there isn't like a company like logo, because I see that there's like kind of the generic thing you need for the LinkedIn. I think it's okay structured, but like, you know, when you upload a resume, sometimes we upload it through a system and you want to make sure that like, see like the LinkedIn and everything on the top, you just want to make sure it's kind of organized a little, because sometimes when we upload it through certain systems, it'll pull things in a certain way. So sometimes those little icons can sometimes get in the way. So you just want to be a little mindful of that. And I'm just going to this is the full? Oh yeah, it's the full. I just wanted to make sure. I was trying to scroll, but I realized I'm not the one sharing my screen. But yeah, I think you want to make sure when you put a resume together, just recognize, like, I know we haven't talked about the second one yet, but when there is a lot of like words in one area, sometimes it'll pull from certain areas when you upload it, and it might upload a little bit differently. But again, it depends on the system where we're uploading our resume to kind of keep track of them. I know there's like certain places like Bullhorn sometimes will maybe take the phone number and replace it for the name. So just make sure there's like a way when you're uploading it that it doesn't kind of get in the way of your name and other information that you need. So kind of keeping that concise and together. So sometimes with those symbols, again, it might upload a little bit different in our tracking system. And you want to make it as easy for the recruiter as you can, because we want to make sure we have all the information for you. And yeah, that would be like my feedback on that one.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Unfortunately, I understand from the recruiting perspective, because as I mentioned, I used to be in HR, so I know what it's like. The ATS, it's kind of just a way to streamline, the hiring process, which is great for recruiters. But one thing that I will say about this resume, similar to what Sophie said, it's definitely the icons. It's unfortunately going to move around the verbiage in your resume. So for example, switching your name with your phone number. Now that is kind of a way for the ATS to rank your resume. I don't want to say lower, but it's going to not prioritize certain key aspects or words. One thing that I do love about this resume is the fact that they list what they were doing first, as opposed to list so their role name, rather than listing the company that they were working for, because there's plenty of times where applicants get so caught up in, I work for XYZ company, so they'll prioritize that over what it was that they were actually doing. So I really do enjoy the fact that they listed what they were doing rather than the company that they were working for first. But I say that to say that the format really is really important.
All right, Kerry-Ann is taking the wheel because my computer does not want me to zoom in and out properly. But yeah, I agree with both of what you said. I think it's like really important. Whoops, hang on. I think it's really important to make sure that you're sharing the right information, that it's really easy to read. So for the resume that we're zoomed into right now, I think there's a lot of blank space, and that kind of makes it easier to read, but also takes a lot longer to read through. And unfortunately, like, we're not spending a lot of time going through each and every resume. There is just like really quickly trying to make sure you hit those key things that we're looking for. So I always recommend just making sure that you're making the best use of the space. Also, this resume specifically was like 4 or 5 pages long, and I never recommend having your resume, especially as a student, be more than 1 page. Because I think, yes, you have a lot of experience to share, but there's always something that you can do with the formatting to make it fit onto that 1 page. So thinking about all this blank space, oh, perfect. So thinking about like all the blank space that you have, I think it's so important to make better use of it, and just think about, like, how can you showcase that information in a way that it just looks good and it's easy to read. And then for the second resume, I think, let me see if I can annotate. Yes, I'm going to do that. So if you can go back to that first, yeah, perfect. Thank you. So for this resume, I think all of the information that's written like up on the top, so all of this, I hope everyone can see that line that I just drew. Funny, but it works. All of that, I think, does not need to be there. And I think, like, it's nice, but you could write a cover letter and include all of this information. So everything right here. And it takes away from the real information that we want to be looking at, which is all of this experience. And then you had an internship there too. So that's what we want to look at. We want to see your graduation date, like your education is all the way on the bottom. Oops. That's the last thing that we see, and it should be the first thing that you see, especially with an internship. But the only other thing I want to say before we get into all the other resumes is that all of this is very subjective. Internship review and resume review is so subjective based on who you're speaking with, who you're interviewing with, and especially the industry. As we go through this, you'll see a couple of resumes that I think are creative because they're set up in a different way. But all of us are going to have different opinions, but I think they're all right because we're working in similar industries and similar roles. And I think it's really important to take that all into mind too. So I think we're good to move on to the next slide, unless Sophie and Arianny, you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I actually just want to quickly mention about the second resume. So similar to what you were just saying, it's taking up so much real estate at the top of your resume rather than getting to, straight, like, this is what I did. And I feel like, utilizing specific keywords such as musical performances and things like that. It's kind of just a way to drive up that algorithm. And that's what I was referring to earlier. You don't just want to include words that you think will help you move past the ATS. You want to ensure that your professional experience is similar to what Asma just shared. Your education is at the top when it's for an internship, because you're a recent grad. The education being at the bottom is more for seasoned employees, you know, people that have been out of college, let's say for 10 or so years. But you are a recent grad, you just invested so much time into research, being a student, you want to prioritize that. So super, super important.
Also, to put in my 2 cents, I see some soft skills like networking and public speaking and team leadership. That's all great, but I don't think that like those are kind of redundant and kind of implied in that they kind of expect you to have. And in terms of like listing out like a bunch of industry skills, I would rather honestly make it relevant to the job description and make it really focused, because a lot of the areas are like multiple different things. It helps, but you know, keep it, tailor it down just a little bit. So I'll go to the next one.
Yeah, great point. And like, just to think about it in the sense of, you want to save something for the interview, right? So if you're putting everything and anything that you've ever done, if you have all those bullet points, you don't want to make that interview be just you reading through your resume. So I think it's important to know, like, what I say for students specifically is 3 to 5 bullet points is typically the best way to go when you're describing an experience. I think it gets the gist along, but then you also have that space to use those bullet points and expand on those in your interview. So I can get started with this first one. I'm having a lot of fun with this little marker tool that I now know how to use. It's in view options if you guys want to join in with my fun. So the first thing I noticed about this resume on the left is that this picture is taking up so much space. So while it's great and I love seeing photos on resumes, it's just like not necessary. So I wouldn't do that. And I also think the colors, I think the contrast is smart, but it makes it a little bit difficult to read. So those are the major 2 things that I'd share. And then overall, like, I like the way that you organized it. I just think, you know, your font is so small, but if you had removed this picture or even moved it up and made it a little bit smaller, it would make the rest of your resume a lot easier to read. That's my major comment for this one on the left.
So I have quite some comments as well. I know that, you know, just from working in recruiting and talent coordination, sometimes I will be honest, there are people that are prejudiced. So I always try to tell candidates, if you could opt out for the picture, do so, because, you know, that's what LinkedIn is for. Unfortunately, there are people who will imply their implicit bias throughout the hiring process. So if you could do without the picture, that would be recommended. And something that I do want to know, it's kind of the skill summary. When I'm writing resume for my clients, I always make sure to distinguish what the skill is, because let's say that there's a specific software and the recruiter is not aware of that, but you have it right next to Google Suite or Google Workspace. It's like, are we able to tell that you have a specific software related to the music industry versus a Google Suite? So kind of being able to tell the difference within what's a software, what's, you know, an office suite, what's a language, or even if you want to include industry specific skills, that would be ideal, but making sure that you kind of do tell the difference. So that was my feedback.
I agree with the picture because sometimes with the picture, when you upload a resume with a photo, it sometimes won't take anything off the resume. It'll literally upload as a blank. That's happened to me before, and I'll have to, you know, go in and manually do it, which is fine. But you want to, again, you want to make it just simple, have it all there, concise. There is some blank space too on the other side. I do like I love when resumes have like really pretty colors, but sometimes with the space that's there and the formatting, it sometimes will upload funny. And I think that there's, you clearly have like a really great resume. There's like great skills that you have there, but I think kind of condensing them and maybe making the font a little bit bigger is slightly hard to read. And sometimes with the white in the blue, it sometimes can be a little hard to read. But I think the biggest thing is with the picture, like, exactly it was said that LinkedIn is there to have that. You'll have your photo on there, just on a resume. It's not really necessary if you're like a performer and, going to auditions, then yeah, of course, have a photo, but you don't always need it. You don't really need it on your resume because it will upload blank sometimes, and you want to avoid that. I think that's like the biggest takeaway. But yeah, and also, having like a little, you have your academic background, but even having like a, I think sometimes it's okay to have like a very slight intro with the branding yourself, which we were talking about, having that elevator pitch kind of somewhere there. But yeah, again, biggest thing, picture can definitely come off as like a blank resume when you upload it, so.
Also, my 2 cents, I see that they have like a music industry certificate. I would push that up into academic backgrounds. I will remove the blue. Really, resume font should be 10 to 12. So like if I have to strain and zoom in, I like, assuming I'm printing it off. And then also there, in the career classroom series, so I would have loved them to put that as experience because it does count as experience. Okay, so next one, can y'all see the next one? Ooh, child. Can y'all see this one? The peachy one? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Anyone can start off with their comments.
I think the biggest thing is some of these like titles and companies are very close together. And when, again, going back to that uploading thing, because again, that's really part of this whole process, it will upload funny. And sometimes with the colored backgrounds, it sometimes will also upload blank. So you just kind of want to be careful with that. I do like that the about me is kind of short and sweet, but you could even brand it a little bit more and even make it a little more personal. And I think sometimes with the skills, you can see at the end, they're kind of cutting into the end of the resume. So you maybe either want to trim the skills down, summarize it a little differently, maybe make it one keyword, and kind of just keep it very simple there, because when you are pulling it, you are pulling those keywords. But I think, again, you just want to be sometimes careful with, backgrounds like a pink or something when you upload it. Be careful about how close the words are together. And with those skills, if you're going to put them at the top, just really make them keywords, make them buzzwords. They could be like 1 or 2 words. You want to kind of avoid them getting really close to the edge of the page. Education should definitely be towards the top, as we said in the beginning. So maybe you could switch the skills and the education out, and the about me could even be a little more personal, just a little more. I know it's a little hard at the top, and sometimes with the font, it can get in the way, but there's ways to simplify it with the education by moving some things around. But definitely put that at the top if you're applying for an internship.
You're muted.
Muted.
Can you believe we're like a year into this whole pandemic and I still haven't gotten a grasp of that? But as I was saying while I was on mute, I'm so big on branding, and to me, that's how you distinguish yourself. I myself, I think that storytelling is a beautiful thing, telling your story and how you're different, despite, maybe not having the relevant experience. You still have something that could be a cultural add to whatever job you're applying to. So similar to what Sophie just said, really brand yourself, especially in that about me section. Like, what is it that you do? What makes you so special? What could you bring on to the team? So definitely be strategic. I love words because you could say one thing a million ways, but it's really all about how you place yourself. So definitely very big on branding. And I think that as we move, towards this like digital age, which we're already in, but the more we get into it, I think storytelling and really setting yourself apart is becoming a big thing, especially in the recruitment world. Because it's like, okay, we've seen certain expertise, but what could you bring on to the team? So I'm very big on cultural add rather than like a cultural fit. So definitely storytelling so that you could be that cultural add.
Yeah, I agree when it comes to just the formatting. I'm a really big format person. So like there's a lot of dead space around still when it comes to just the left. And I think like you're struggling to fit a lot of this text in or make it easy to read. So you could always move this around. Like here, let me get my highlighter. Hang on. Like you can move some stuff around here. Oh, why is it not working? You can move some stuff around here and fill the space, but really like it comes down to just making it easy to read. Like maybe if you just remove that underline, it'll be easier to read. So I think it's important to just keep that in mind. And also, like, there are some skills here that you can cut out if you are just looking for space. And I agree with moving the education to the top. But the other comment that I had is you have a lot of fantastic experience with just like the work that you're doing here, the work that you're doing here, but there's no handle, there's no link. So what I would recommend is if you have this Twitter with so many followers, so much that you're doing, you should put the @ here so that if someone is looking or considering you for a social media role, they can see the quality of your work, even if you're not active. And the same thing goes for Clubhouse. Like you want to include your @ your handles, your anything that you're doing, your like links, so that it's easy to access. Because I know anytime I see a link, I'm going to click on it. I think it just brings more to just a piece of paper. And I can see already the quality of work that you're doing, and especially for digital media, marketing, any type of role in that realm, they're going to ask for those links regardless. They're going to ask for your portfolio, and you'll see how different people have shared it in their resumes as we move on. But yes, that's the thing that I'd share. Just mess around with the formatting a little bit, send it over to a couple people, see if they find it easy to read. I think it's always helpful to get some feedback.
Again, my 2 cents. I think like just streamlining it with the projects and industry involvement, when you kind of split into 2 columns, it kind of like shifts my eyes. And then there's like white space. I feel like if they just shifted it a little bit and kind of extend things. And then also, since they have a lot of experience, there's some things that honestly can be cut out. Like I don't put every single thing that I've done. If you like, they've obviously acquired enough experience that if they apply to, let's say, a music industry social media experience internship, then it should be just like music industry social media stuff rather than other things. Like it helps add, but they have like the direct and transferable experience already. So all the additional stuff that's supplemental really isn't needed. Okay, sounds good.
Yes, but also to add to that, I always think like this is where LinkedIn is really crucial, where you can add all of your experiences on LinkedIn. It's going to be nice and set up in that easy to read flow. But I also don't think you should add anything that's not during college onto your resume, especially when you have that much experience. Because a lot of the stuff that you're doing in high school is just not relevant to what we're looking for now. So that's always what I suggest.
Okay, sounds good. So we're going on to this next one. People have been saying they can't see well. I'm trying the best I can with making it everyone can see everything. So let us know if you're having any troubles. But yeah, let's start off with this one. How about Sophie again?
Yeah, so first of all, education is kind of at the bottom again. You know, that really should be at the top, especially with internship roles. And some of these skills, I know we kind of talked about that in the beginning, you know, they are a little wordy, like the fan culture thing with the social media thing. Twitter's also not capitalized. You want to make sure that certain thing, you also spell check and, you know, all of that as well. That's just, you know, important, also can help come up in that system. With strong organizational skills, that's a little vague. So maybe find like one buzzword that's a little specific and then also could match the job. I think it's great that there's a little intro at the top, but again, you know, really brand that and make that you. I think that personal brand is really important, especially now I know we were talking about that. That would probably be my biggest takeaway. And also at the bottom, you know, where it says events, you're kind of cutting into the bottom a little bit. You know, you do want, I just for a formatting and a look reason, I would just, again, either simplify things or take things away that might not really be relevant for the job you're applying for. Definitely short and concise, that like those skills a little more condensed. And then I don't always know about relevant coursework. That's an option on LinkedIn, and that's actually at the bottom of your profile. I would actually say maybe you could even take that off and maybe add something else, maybe specify with this fan culture experience thing that you mentioned. That's really interesting. I want to know more about that, maybe like brand that a little bit differently, but definitely making sure you move your education to the top. That's really crucial. And just kind of having your LinkedIn at the top. I know we've kind of locked out everything for privacy, but making sure that's there, your email address, phone number, and just making sure it's going to be easily readable in that system as well. So kind of having that in a, you know, kind of structured in like a very organizational way.
And for me, I'm also very big on again, storytelling. So I think that just looking at these experiences, I can tell that this person has done a lot looking at their name. So instead of talking about responsibility, let's kind of shift focus to talking about success. Perhaps, you know, when you were doing event staffing, maybe you coordinated an event and you had to oversee a specific amount of people or amount of budget, or you worked with like 4+ cross-functional teams. So rather than saying, you know, I was responsible for overseeing event coordination, tell us what that looks like. Give us some insight, allow us to like picture what it was for you day to day. And another thing that I always say is your resume is a marketing tool. So utilize it to brand yourself, talk about your success. What do you want the recruiter to know? Because, you know, if you're saying, let's say you were a social media manager and you're just saying that you manage social media, we could kind of expect that because of your title. So rather than saying that, it's crucial to storytell and really like allow the recruiter or hiring manager insight as to what it would be like to have you on their team. So the bullet points, really refining those.
Yeah, and then the other thing I would add is just make sure your tense is correct. So I know sometimes you'll say like responsible, promoted, volunteer, like that's great, but you just want to make sure that you're adding it all. So if it's a present role, you want to make sure everything is in present tense. If it's a past role, you want to make sure it's in past tense. And then also, again, like if you're doing 1 bullet, 2 bullets for each of your roles, you want to keep that standard for the rest of your resume. So there are some areas where there's nothing underneath that role. So I just suggest like adding in something, mess around with the fonts if it's not fitting. But that's what I would recommend too. So it kind of all looks the same. And then the relevant coursework section, I agree where it's not necessarily necessary. But if you don't have a lot of experience and you're trying to get, you know, your first internship, I think that's an area where you can add maybe 3 or 4 courses. But 9 times out of 10, I would say, like, especially on a resume like this, you really don't need it. And then I saw a question come into the chat and it asked if I have any recommendations for resume templates. I think Arianny is going to be the best person to ask for that. But I also I love Canva. I think I love seeing the Canva resumes. I love seeing like the templates that they use, and everything on Canva, you can download it as a PDF. So it makes it easy to read in our ATSs. But you'll see a couple examples of those as we go on. But typically, you know, your career development center will have some templates too. You can always, and I hate this answer, but you can always Google it and you'll find something you'll like. But I'd say like start off with Canva if you want a different looking resume. I think the one on the left looks like it's from Google Docs, but a lot of Word documents, a lot of different platforms typically have it built into their systems now.
Also, again, my 2 cents. The fan culture experience, I'd rather you just put that as professional experience. Also, in terms of like the waitress scene, I think it's like the waitress scene experience. I think it's customer service. I think those skills transfer over, but I also think that person has set themselves up enough to have like just music industry, entertainment industry on the resume. So I'd rather they just expand it a little bit more. Oh, imagine my surprise, I didn't know we were taking questions. I was like, what is that? But yeah, I think in terms of getting everyone's questions, how about we like quickly wrap up on the resume review? Let's finish this next one and then move on to questions quickly. Is that okay with everyone? Okay, thank you.
You're on mute, Carrie. Okay.
We can start, not child. We can start with this one. I can zoom out. Child. Okay.
Kerry-Ann, can we actually go to one of the next slides? Because I think those are the resumes that I thought were like fantastic.
Yeah.
So I definitely want to get
Oh,
some
I like
eyes
this
on those.
one.
Yeah,
Okay.
this one at the bottom. Yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay, I like this one.
All right, I can get started. So I want to start off with the one on the right, if that's okay. So this is an intern that we actually hired. And I really liked their resume because it's really showing, you know, all of their experiences. You'll see they're not all internships. Some of it is on-campus experience, which we really like to consider. And then some of it is, you know, internship experience, which we also consider. But it's a variety. They're showcasing it really, really well. They're also showcasing all their skills on the bottom, which ultimately helped us make our decision. Where when you're organizing your skills, you want to make sure, you know, if you know how to use something, tell us that you know how to use it. And a good thing here, like if you look at the bottom, let me get my marker, hang on. Over here, like how they organize all of their skills is so important because our systems love that. And it makes it really easy when we're searching for specific skills. Like if I'm looking for someone who knows how to use Excel, I'm able to find it by just looking up Excel. But this is a resume where you can also see how color blocking is going to work, where it's not a plain white background. It makes it pop out a little bit more. And it just looks really great. And then again, like they're following that example of 3 to 4 bullet points to just get that point across, but never really writing too much. But yeah, and then for the one on the left, I again like how this is separated and organized. You're giving more experience, you're giving more of the experience here, but you're also sharing on the left, sorry, and then you're also sharing like what you're involved in on the right. So you're making better use of the space rather than trying to fit everything in a way that you can just read down. You're just displaying it really well.
Also, since these are the good examples, are people allowed to just screenshot these for reference, especially the one who actually got hired? I don't know if you have their consent or not. I don't know if they're in the chat or not, since the names are blocked off.
I would just say no, just because, you know, it is something that they created. And I think sometimes you just want to be considerate. I think it's good to write down how they organize things, but you don't want to just look at what they did and say, I have to copy this, because again, resumes are so subjective. You want to make it your own. So I would say you can take this as a reference, but every single resume we've shown you today looks totally different. So that's the only reason I would say don't screenshot it, just because it doesn't necessarily mean that this is a perfect resume. It's just a good resume. And if I get a million resumes that look exactly like this one on the right, it doesn't mean I'm going to consider every single one of them. So I think it's just like you have to make it your own. I hope that makes sense. And also just for privacy, because even though their names aren't on there, it is still their information.
Mm-hmm. I 100% agree with that, but I think I have a couple of resume resources on hand. So in the recap email, make sure everyone opens that. I will send some resume resources just to help everyone out, and then I'm sure Arianny can, you know, do some resume reviews. Yeah. But now that we wrap that up, I'll stop sharing my screen and we can move on to Q&A. I saw Olivia first, so I'll have her join.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hi. So for those of you who don't know me, because I do know about 2 or 3 of you up here, Kerry-Ann, Mia, but I wanted to ask because I kind of had difficulty as far as like when I should turn in my creative resume versus when I should turn in my resume scan. What is it called? The ATS? Okay, it's like when I should turn in my ATS type of friendly resume versus when I turn my creative resume, because I get different replies from people. They're like, well, if you're doing more creative role, you should turn it in even though it's not ATS friendly because somebody's going to read it. But then like you can't guarantee if somebody's going to read it. But at the same time, I kind of want to stand out from my ATS friendly resume because I feel like it's more traditional. So I kind of wanted to get you guys like input about that and when you think it'd be the right time to turn in creative versus professional.
So I think that's a really good question. And again, like the ATS is really at the center of all of this. So I would say that this is like a case where you use your own jurisdiction. You know, if you feel like this role is one that entails for you to be creative, or perhaps you have direct access to the recruiter where you can send out your resume, definitely, you know, make it on the creative side. But if you're able to kind of have that professional resume, just, you know, simple format. I always say go with that, just in terms of, you know, you don't want to play around or mess too much with the ATS, but I wonder what the other panelists have to say. Because black and white doesn't have to be boring. It really doesn't. You could really create some meaningful stuff, but I totally get the creativity aspect.
Asma, I think you're muted.
I am muted, sorry. But I would say sometimes, yes, you have to use your judgment and figure out like what's going to work. But what I recommend is, if you can, and if you're applying to, especially within entertainment, you can sometimes download your resume as a PDF and attach, you know, another PDF to it. So if you can submit both resumes at once, that's what I recommend. I think you're able to do that on Workday. If not, definitely scroll down in the job description if you're applying on LinkedIn and see if you can find the name of the recruiter. And if it's been a week or two and you haven't quite heard back, I think it's okay to send an email and say, this is another version of my resume that I have, and I'd love to share it with you. Or if you're in an interview, send along the updated copy, a creative copy. I think it's always okay to share it then.
I think also with a creative resume, a great thing that you can also do is sometimes there's extra links that you can put on a job application. So if you have a portfolio, maybe uploading both of those resumes on there, or even formulating your creative resume to match your portfolio, your online portfolio, to show off your creative work. That's a really great way, an easy way to upload it too. And then you can have both of those copies there. I have seen many candidates do that. And sometimes the website also pops out too. And I think sometimes seeing everyone's portfolios is really cool and really useful. So that's another way too.
I'm gonna talk as a student. I have a creative resume. It's pink. It's gotten through ATS and like various things. I say I'm gonna post the link. I'm gonna say use these like ATS scanners websites and like match it to the job description, and it will tell you like what picks up, and that will help you decide like will you get read or not. And then like, because I've never used no black and white resume, and I've gotten my stuff looked at. So do that. And also always join like a partner organization or something that can like feed your resume directly to the hiring managers.
Yeah.
But yes, we can do.
Alana, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, hi. Good to see you again, Kerry-Ann and Mia. And thank you to the panelists for being here and sharing some of these awesome gems. My question is, when it comes to any projects that we've worked on in our courses, like for example, I've taken like a communications in the music industry course where I did like PR work for an artist for a whole semester, or like I did a music supervision course where I worked with like sync paperwork and that kind of licensing stuff. How would you suggest that we put that onto our resume if it wasn't necessarily like a long-term experience?
So I wonder,
Oh, you can go.
so I definitely, similar to what was just shared, a portfolio is great, but don't feel restricted to not list it on your resume. Let's say you want to include that as its own like section or experience, you definitely could. I always recommend 3 bullet points. 3 bullet points is great. And that way you can refer to the STAR method, you know, talking about the situation, the task, what actions you took, and what were the results. So, you know, I always say time doesn't matter. You could have spent 3 months and create and really generated and catalyzed change where you were at. Or you could have spent a year and you were just doing like day-to-day operations and really didn't generate anything crazy or that you felt was noteworthy. So it's really up to you to see how you want to brand yourself as, but definitely don't let time be like a deterrence to not list it on your resume. That could be its own experience, especially because, you know, it's within the realm that you're pursuing, you feel passionate about it, and you create a meaningful work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Also, we have a couple YouTube questions, so I don't want to discriminate against them. And then also on top of that, we have the Clubhouse after party. Asma will be there to answer your questions, so please do not worry. Someone please drop the Clubhouse link. And then we can, it'll be starting right after this. So don't worry if you still need to get to your question. So someone on YouTube, so on the YouTube. Okay, someone on YouTube asked, like, so what specific qualities and skills that you all love to see when reviewing a resume or cover letter?
I can go first. I mean, there's nothing that I love to see because I think it's all relative to what position you match up best with. So I think it varies, but I really love to see like the basic skills. Like if you know how to use Microsoft Office, if you know how to use Adobe, sometimes people don't think to include that, but it is something that you really should be including and highlighting. So that's a skill I love to see because I know if you've included Excel or if you've included Adobe, like I can send you to a lot more hiring managers who specified that these are skills that they want. But when it comes to like the soft skills, I really wouldn't recommend wasting the space on your resume with the soft skills. And I know we've said that a couple times, but I really think like if you want something, if you need to fill that space on your resume, add in your coursework because we're going to see those soft skills when we're talking to you, when you're interviewing you. So that's the only thing I'll say. And I think it like, again, it varies by role, but I really like to see like what you can do, like show me or tell me what you can do in your resume. And then you can show me when you're telling me about yourself in that interview about how you've used those skills. I think that's really important, like the follow through aspect.
I think that was meaningful advice for sure.
Also, Sophie, do you have anything to answer with that as well?
Everything was said that, I definitely agree because in the interview, it's going to come out, on your LinkedIn, you also can have those listed as well. I know we keep going back to LinkedIn, but that really also is part of that because that's going to be on your resume. So you can also continue, if you have skills that you really want to make known, make sure they're on your LinkedIn too.
I also have a question. So a lot of students don't have that direct music industry experience. It may be like what school they go to, what area are they in. So what do you recommend that they should be filling their resume with?
So for me, I briefly touched up on this earlier. I think those transferable skills are key. For example, somebody that works, I'll use an example out of the music industry to kind of personify my example. But let's say there's an applicant who's only worked sales jobs or fast food jobs and wants to transition to the world of finance. There are still those key skills that they could transfer, whether it be cross-functional team leadership, budget management, working with different crowds, so cross-cultural communications and things of that sort. So similar to the entertainment industry, perhaps you have experience in content coordination, or maybe you're really good at research, or you're able to refine certain methodologies. So kind of I always say, look at a job description, always ask yourself, what can I do and what can I not, maybe I'm not so well versed at. So when you look at a job description, despite it being in a different industry, kind of pinpoint and pick what you feel like you're strong at, and then correlate it so that way you're able to translate it to the specific industry. But transferable skills are everything. I used to be a intellectual property paralegal, and then I was a recruiter, and now I'm in tech, and I never had like tech experience. And it's crazy how much really branding yourself as and kind of talking about transferable skills can do for you. And I'm sure Sophie can attest, because I come from a political science background, and then I went into tech. So it's like, it happens all the time. Don't let it, make you feel like, oh, I don't have enough experience, or I'm not well versed to do this. Passion will take you a long way, and advocating for yourself.
Absolutely. I also went to a school where we didn't have like the biggest resources for entertainment. And I have seen so many people from my college go out and do different things. So don't let, if you don't have those resources, those transferable skills are incredibly important, with political science, which I know we, both studied, you can use those people skills and really talk about how that works with networking. You know, I've screened people that have medical and science backgrounds, so kind of using like the left and right brain and creative thinking versus like strategical thinking. So there's like ways that you can brand yourself to make you stand out with having like a different field of study or different resources that you have. So definitely those transferable skills are so important.
Thank you for
Right,
that.
and I think it goes back to that idea that all experience is experience. I really think it's important. Like if you've ever been a barista, if you've ever worked at cash register, like that, you have to work so quickly. You have to deal with a lot of different personalities. And that's a skill that is applicable any industry, any role that you apply to. And honestly, similarly, I never thought I would be in music. I was in insurance. That was my first role, so very different. So I think it really is all about that passion. You want to be able to transfer and say like, why music? Why this industry? And for WMG, I've seen this across the board. We're not always looking for people who have that music industry background. For our internship program, it's a little bit different. But when you're looking on like the long-term scale, so for full-time roles, for certain roles, we're really looking for someone who's not in music so that they can think differently about the industry. They can have different suggestions and it's not just the same old, same old. So don't be deterred because again, all experience is good experience. So don't feel like you have to take off things of your resume because it's not relevant. That's just not going to help you. So don't go into it with that negative mindset. You want to know like, these are the experiences that I have and I value them and I'm here and I'm applying for a reason.
Sounds good. We have one more question with Nikki, and then we can move on to Clubhouse.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Nikki. Thank you so much for this awesome panel today. It has been super informative. My question actually relates back to COVID. So I was supposed to pursue an internship with Live Nation that was unfortunately canceled due to COVID. And I was wondering, I'm thinking this is going to go more into the cover letter aspect rather than the resume, but if you were able to have that opportunity and you couldn't pursue it due to these unforeseen circumstances, like, does that hold you back or, you know, put you behind other applicants, or what do you would suggest in terms of like integrating that into a cover letter?
So I definitely think, you know, COVID is crazy. We were all taken by a storm when it happened. I know I thought it would be like a week. Now we're a whole year into this pandemic. So I think that mentioning it in your cover letter, but being strategic about it, you know, perhaps saying like, I was going to, so I'll phrase it this way. So maybe let's say you were talking about your music passion and music industry. You could talk about how you came about the company that you're currently applying for, then talking about a little bit of your relevant experience, but also mentioning what you were supposed to do if COVID wasn't a thing. And I think that mentioning that when you're interviewing will be super important. Of course, you know, a recruiter will read through the cover letter as much as they can, but you want to make sure that you're reinforcing that point when you're interviewing, because that's totally out of your hands. Like, it's not like you didn't want the internship. I mean, you got it, but definitely mentioning that.
I've also heard people put it on their resume and just say like canceled due to COVID. And I don't think it will hinder you. Like if you got an internship in Live Nation, it was beyond your control on what happened. So like if you have the space, like treat it like, you know, the header with like the position and stuff like that, just put, instead of date, just put canceled due to COVID. And it, you know, if you're applying to anything music industry related, and then talk about it in your cover letter. And also people want to know what you're like, okay, it got canceled, but like some people want to know, so like, what are you doing in the in-between time? And like, what other experiences and skills that you have acquired? I think I've seen a lot of things come out of COVID. Like a lot of students have created such amazing projects and programs in response to COVID that still counts as experience. So if you think about it that way, it's not going to like, congrats, but like, you know, paint the story a little bit.
Or maybe even if you want to talk about what you were supposed to do, you know, if you feel like, oh my God, I really need to highlight this because maybe it was my first experience doing this, you know, talk to the hiring manager, talk about maybe some quotas or numbers that you were kind of expected to meet, or what your day-to-day operations would look like if you are really passionate about including it on your resume.
Sounds good. So unfortunately, we have come on time. This has been such a great event and such great resources. So please, everyone, we'll drop the links again. Please come to the clubhouse. We'll be continuing answering your questions. And then also that please connect with All Access and Color Music Collective further. And everyone, you don't have to submit anything to prioritize your application. We know who joined the event, so please do not worry. All we ask from you is you'll receive an email asking for feedback. So please, like, be as detailed as possible. That's what helps bring these events. Please follow us, both All Access and Color Music, on our social media platforms, join our and come for more programs like this. And let us know what you thought and like what, you know, I'm speaking into existence. So when fall comes around, what can we possibly do to help with your applications? Okay, y'all. So we're going to transition onto Clubhouse, but as a quick closer, I just want to ask, like, any last advice, like what can candidates be doing now to possibly secure something for the summer, fall, or even a full-time job even? Let's make that the closer and then we'll go on from there.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and say my piece. I personally don't think it's too late to find a summer internship. There's still so many job postings out there, music industry, tech, whatever it is that you want to do. What I will say is be very big on being proactive rather than reactive. You know, if you see that a job posting is closing May 3rd, you don't want to wait till May 2nd to get that application in. Really make sure that you're doing what we talked about, proactively networking, creating those organic conversations, refining your professional tools, whether it be resume, LinkedIn. So just very, very important to be proactive, because that way, you know, you're doing all that you can. And at that point, it's whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, I agree. I think definitely be proactive, start looking, even if you're just browsing, it doesn't mean you have to apply right away, but start looking for the fall. It doesn't hurt, it'll help you. And the other thing is, don't be discouraged if you're not hearing back. I think it goes back to what we were sharing before. It's kind of like a game. You just have to keep up with applying, keep up with just what's happening at WMG, any of these other industries that you're interested in, and just keep looking. And then the last thing is definitely keep going to events like this. I mean, I've worked with Kerry-Ann and Mia multiple times at this point, and I think we get really fantastic students, really fantastic resumes from here. So get involved, attend events like these, because this is how you're going to have that one-on-one interaction with people like us who are on the other side looking at your resumes. So definitely stay active, however you can, however you're comfortable with.
I think definitely understanding that, you know, just because you get no from one application doesn't mean there's so many other possibilities out there. Really use, you know, LinkedIn as your resource. You know, I know I've been saying that a lot, but it's true. Network with people, build a network there, talk to people, ask if you can have informational calls or conversations with certain recruiters in certain fields that you want to work at, or people who might have been in that role previously. And just, you know, be yourself, be really passionate, go in, and you're going to do a great job in your interviews. And we're all wishing you the best of luck. Yeah.
Sounds good. Mia, do you have anything to share? You've been doing a lot, so I know you got some advice.
No, I feel like everyone's pretty much covered everything. I will make the Clubhouse room live for those that have iOS. I know that Androids and everything, they don't have access to that yet. So definitely join now if you haven't already, and we can answer the rest of your questions.
Also, if anyone needs a Clubhouse invite, I have invites. So don't DM me here, but if you email allaccessinterns@gmail.com and send me your number, I don't know, however you want to do it, I will give you an invite so you can join the room. I'll close up now. All I have to say, if you know you're interested in a company, you should be taking the steps right now to get there. So please do your research. Please do your research, talk to people, network properly. Don't expect to connect with someone and they will get you in. The entertainment industry requires a lot of work. So please just be proactive as possible in finding as many opportunities as you can. I can delve into this all day and we can delve into this into the Clubhouse chat. So let's end this right now. And thank you everybody for joining. This was such a great event. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.